Today is week 4 of Lessons from a Toilet Overflow, and I've had a lot of fun with this series. I hope you've had fun joining me on this journey. It's kind of been fun looking back over the past 9 months and seeing what I've learned from the whole ordeal, and believe it or not, I'm still dealing with it. Probably spent about 3 hours this past week on the phone with insurance companies and trying to figure all that out. So even though we're back in the home, and even though this started a year ago, March 9th, we're coming up on the year anniversary of the infamous toilet overflow. I'm going to have a party on the 9th, and you're all invited. I'm still dealing with it. So we're just walking through it one step at a time. And as I came to the end here, as I was starting to plan out the series, I said, well, what's the perfect way to end Lessons from a Toilet Overflow? And I came up with an idea. And the title of this sermon is called You as the Teacher. And what I want to do in this sermon this morning is I want to pull the curtain back a little bit. I want to show you how the pizza is made, if that's okay. So I want to show you how I came up with this series, how I put it together, and a little insight into how I work on my sermons, all with the goal of, and I have this one up here. Here's the goal for you this morning. Is I want to help you see the wisdom that is present in your life. Yes, I believe you all have wisdom present in your life right now, regardless of what you're going through. And I want to help you discover it. I want to help you mine it to see, well, what are all the things that is happening right now? It's all the wisdom that you're learning, and then you can all be the teacher. You can all give a sermon. How's that sound? All right, most everyone's like, no, please no. So let me tell you my starting point. I want to give you a wide framework for how I begin basically all of my sermons, from the moment that I start thinking about them to then how I go ahead and put them all together for what you see here on a Sunday morning. And here's a starting point for me. I ran into this verse and some commentary on it early on in the life of Awaken. Debbie's probably heard me speak about this verse 15 times before, maybe not in a couple of years, but this story is one that has had just profound, the wisdom of this has just taught me so much about the spiritual life and about this journey that we're all on. And it's found in the book of Exodus, chapter 24. And there's a man by the name of Moses. Who's heard of Moses before? All right, me and Adam. Now, Moses he's a deliverer. The Israelites are in bondage. They're enslaved to the Egyptians. And Moses has this encounter with Pharaoh. Let my people go. Pharaoh doesn't want to let the Israelites go. He wants to keep them doing his bidding. Eventually, Moses is able, through God's power, to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. It's known as the Exodus. And now Moses is leading this entire group of ex-slaves through the wilderness. They're grumbling, they're upset, and God is leading them. And God, at this point in the story, has called Moses to the top of a mountain because he says, I'm going to give you some instructions. I'm going to give you some guidelines to live by. And so God says to Moses, just leave all the people at the base of the mountain. They'll be fine. Let's see who survives after the 40 days on the top of the mountain. They'll make it, most of them at least. And then I want you to come to the top of the mountain, and I'm going to give you what's known as these 10 commandments, these instructions for how to lead this community. And I wanted to go through the JPS, the Jewish Publication Society translation, because I think it's much better than the NIV or other translations. It gets to the heart of what this verse is actually saying. So the Lord said unto Moses, come up to me into the mount and be there, and I will give thee the tables of stone and the law and the commandment which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. Speaking about teaching all the Israelites. So notice what's going on here. God calls Moses where? To the top of I got to make sure you're all not comatose. So to the top of the mountain. And then notice this odd phrase, come up to me and be there. Well, hold on a second. If Moses is at the top of the mountain, where is he? He's there, is he not? So why is there this extra commandment to be there? And in Jewish commentaries on this verse, many of the rabbis throughout the centuries have said what they say about the entire Bible is that no word is just randomly put in there. There's no phrase that's randomly put into the Bible. Every single word, every phrase has a very specific meaning. And so the rabbis, very early on, they noticed that this seemed redundant. Well, if Moses is already there, well, why this command to be there unless you can be there but not really be there? You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever experienced this before in your life? Where you're there, but you're not really there. I remember when I was probably my early 20s, I drove up to a concert in Hartford, Connecticut. And this concert, I don't even know what time it got over. By the time it got over, and I go to bed really early. I started going to bed really early in college. Freshman year in college, I hit about like the 4, 5 o'clock a.m. And I came home for one break, and my parents were like, "What is wrong with you? You look like death." They're like, "What time have you been going to bed?" I'm like, "I don't know, like 4. They're like, "Do yourself a favor and go to bed earlier." So once I started seeing some pictures and those dark circles under my eyes and how I look completely haggard, I was like, "Ooh, I should probably start going to bed earlier." So starting my second year of freshman year at college, second semester of freshman year, I started going to bed by midnight at the latest, but typically sometime between 10 and 11. And it's a practice that I have continued to this day. So I go to bed really, really early. So this was way past my bedtime. Like when I go to community group, I'm already like falling asleep. I'm like, "Oh, it's past my time when I got to start getting ready for bed." This was way beyond my bedtime. And I had a, Hartford, Connecticut to back here to Westchester, a good hour and a half, 2-hour car ride. I made it home, but I remember pulling into my driveway and was like, "Whoa, where'd the past 2 hours go?" I don't remember the highway. I don't remember the roads at all. And this happens all the time when we're driving, especially when it's familiar roads, does it not? You're leaving, you turn the radio on, turn the music on. Maybe you call someone on your phone. The next thing you know, you're in your driveway. You're like, "I don't even remember the roads was there traffic? I don't remember." I don't know what it was like. So we all have these experiences where we're there physically, but spiritually, mentally, we're really not all there. We're not all present. And I put these 2 arrows here because oftentimes, here's what happens in life. We spend a lot of time in our past. There's shame. There's guilt. There's conversations that we've had with others that really just, they bother us. Maybe it's something that we said, and we're like, "Oh, I wish I could take that back." You ever have that? "Ooh, I wish I hadn't made that comment. I saw the look that she gave me when I said that, and I really wish I hadn't said that." Or someone says something to you, and why did they say that? Do they really think I'm that way? Or there's an action, something, and so we spend a lot of time ruminating on the past, thinking about how things could have been. Or we spend time in the future, thinking about how we desire for things to be. We plan, and planning's a good thing. We should all plan. If we don't plan, there'd be no food in your pantry at home for lunch, which maybe there isn't. I don't know. But planning is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with planning. But when we spend so much time in the past or in the future, we're not right there in the middle, in the present. I believe I have a quote from one of the rabbi in the 17th century or 18th century. Let's see. Let's go to the quote here. Here we go. This is Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotz, and he lived from 1787 to 1859. So somewhere in that time frame, I'm guessing somewhere in the middle to the end of that, he had this to say about that verse in Exodus. "If Moses went up to the mountain, well, of course he would be there. However, this is proof that a person can exert tremendous effort to reach the top of a mountain, but his head may be elsewhere. The main thing is not the ascent, but being there and only there." So the invitation that God offers to Moses is to be present. I believe, and this is the starting point for me for the spiritual life, I believe the invitation that God is always offering every single one of us is to be present to the moment, to be present to our life. And as I've said, all the wisdom that is present in front of you right now? Because if I had to guess, if you start doing a little bit of digging, there is so much wisdom that you have within you. Whether you believe it or not, because sometimes that truth gets beaten out of us, and we're like, oh, I have nothing to share. I have no wisdom, nothing to offer. But the truth is, you have a gold mine within your soul. Sometimes it just takes a little digging to find it. Last week, we went to Bear Mountain Ice Skating Rink. And let me just say, if you think it's cold in here now, go to the Bear Mountain Ice Skating Rink. Although today might be a little bit warmer, but last Sunday, oh my goodness, my son did not want to get out of the car. He warmed up a little, but then he had an ice pop, which doesn't really make any sense to me. On the way, as you go up Bear Mountain, it's a beautiful drive. I love that drive. I used to go that way every time driving to college. I haven't been there in years. But you'll notice, and this happens a lot of times whenever you're driving up a mountain, along the side of the road, you'll often see signs for scenic lookouts. You ever see these signs before? How many of you have ever pulled over to stop at a scenic lookout? Yeah, some of us. How often was it planned? Was it intentional? Nice. Okay. I like it. Most of the time, I remember I would drive to college, and on Route 80, it would be highest point east of the Mississippi River. There's a giant lookout, and every time I said, oh, I should stop there. And I never stopped there because I just wanted to get to my house, or I just wanted to get to school. I don't want to prolong the journey. Last week, I just wanted to get to Bear Mountain. I didn't have time to stop at the scenic lookout. This is what often happens in life. We're so focused on the destination, where we want to go, where we think we're supposed to be. Right? I know for me last year, it was, if I can just get through these however many months, I thought it was going to be a couple of months. If I can just get back in the house, everything will go back to normal. Everything's going to be okay. I mean, how often do we live like that in life? If I can just get through this week, if I can just make it through this season, if I can just get through this year, if I can just do this, be here, go there, accomplish this, everything is going to be the way in which I've always dreamed it would be. We're so focused, again, on the future that we miss out on the present moment, on that which is right in front of us. Sometimes in life, we need to pull the car over, we need to stop at that scenic lookout, and we just need to be present to the beauty that's in front of us. We also need moments to reflect. If we're so focused on the doing and the going, we'll then miss out on all the wisdom that we're trailing behind us. So yes, we do need to be present, and we also need space and time to reflect on where we've been as well. Otherwise, there's so much there within you, so much wisdom that you're carrying within you, but it goes untapped. It goes unnoticed. And so we need to have moments where we pull the car over, we take a breather, because for Moses, and what Rabbi Mendel had to say is that it's not simply about the ascent. It's about the journey itself and finding the gold nuggets that are buried along the way. Last year, I really didn't have much time to reflect. I didn't have much time to just simply be. It was constantly go, go, go. We were dealing with 15 different types of contractors at the house, so it was one phone call after the next, insurance company, paperwork, all those sorts of things. But I did have one thing that I did that actually acted like a scenic lookout. And it was a chance for me to be present and to also reflect back. And I have a picture of one of the toys that I keep in my shed. This tractor, this is one of the first purchases we made when we moved into our home. And if you see our yard, you'll know, yes, there's a reason why we need a ride-on mower. Once a week or once every other week, whenever I had time, I would sit on this mower and I would just cut my grass. And I made an intentional effort. I like listening to podcasts. I will in the car. But I said to myself, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to put earbuds in. I'm not going to put headphones in. I'm just going to be silent. I'm on a tractor, so that doesn't really work so well. But I had those noise-blocking headphones that I would put on to kind of drown out some of the noise of that constant motor buzz. And I would just sit there And I would think about all that I was going through. I think about what was happening, how I was feeling, the things that were making me upset, where I was feeling anxious. I would think about the things that I was learning. And then I don't have it with me this morning, but I always carry a notebook with me. I have a blue notebook right now, currently. I've had different colors before, but the latest notebook I purchased was a blue notebook, and I would carry that notebook. I carry it with me everywhere I go. And whenever a thought comes to me, whether it's for a sermon or just an insight about my own life or something that I'm experiencing, I write that down. I keep a record of it. So I would be driving around on this yellow tractor around my yard, just reflecting and trying to be present to my life right in that moment and all that was transpiring, all that was happening. And there'd be some times that I would get off the tractor in the middle and I would just go grab my notebook, grab a pen, and I would just start scribbling notes down. And so a lot of what we've talked about over the past couple of weeks, that's how it came about. I keep my notebook and things that I'm learning, things that I'm experiencing, I write them down. Ooh, I'm learning this. Oh, this is really, really interesting, because if you don't do this, if you don't keep a record, if you're not intentional about it, all the wisdom that you're learning, it just passes you by. And there's so much here. I guarantee you're all in the middle of something right now, and it's teaching you a lesson about something in life. And if we don't have those lookout experiences or those tractor experiences, if we're constantly filling our heads with noise, we will miss the wisdom of the moment. If we can go to the next slide. A couple years back, I attended a conference for speakers, and there was a line that the presenter said that has always stood out to me. I remember when I first heard this, I was like, ooh, that's really, really good. He said, great speakers are highly in tune with their interior life. They know what everything is doing to them. I was like, ooh, there's something there. So if I want to continue to improve my craft of speaking, well, then I need to pay really close attention to my interior life. I think it's true for speakers, but I think it's true for all of us. If you want to become aware of the wisdom that's present right now, you have to pay attention to what every experience is doing to you. So there's a bunch of questions that I'll always ask myself. And whenever I put a sermon together, these are some of the questions that I'll ask. Let's go one more slide. So how is this experience acting on me? So as I was going through the whole toilet debacle, I would keep asking, okay, how's this experience? What's it doing to me? What's it making me feel? What is it teaching me? What have I found to be true in the midst of what I'm experiencing? I began the series talking about all those mold and asbestos air samples. And I remember thinking as I was getting these back, they're giving me readings for things that I can't see. And then I started connecting it to the interior life, all the things that we can't actually see. Like, oh, there's a profound truth right there in mold and asbestos air samples. Now, that could have just completely passed by. I would have thought nothing of it, but I sat with it for a bit. And I allowed the Spirit to bring, and then you have all these connections. Or what am I learning about myself? What am I learning about others? And I want to revisit a story that I gave. I think I gave this story 2 weeks ago. Actually, go back one slide. It's the story of having to fire a contractor. So I told this story a couple weeks back where this contractor totally jacked up our cement floor and gave all these excuses. Well, the reason why it's too cold out, there's too much cement, that's why it's not drying. And then my brother-in-law was at the house doing some work, and he's like, hey, the contractor is chipping up the cement right now in your basement. And so I rushed to the house, just wasn't working out. We had to fire him. We had to move in a different direction. Now, I revisit that story for a very particular reason. Because in the middle of everything that was going on, I was livid. I was angry. I felt lied to. As I later came to discover, he charged us a crazy amount of money for the work that he was doing. And my neighbor was like, dude, why didn't you call me and ask me my opinion before you hired this guy? Like, I could have given you someone better right from the beginning. It would have saved you all this trouble. And so as this contractor that we had to fire, as he kept lying and giving excuse after excuse, I felt completely betrayed. I was wronged. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever experienced a time in life when you felt wronged? Have you ever experienced a time in life when you felt betrayed? You ever been lied to? See, the thing is you take your particular experience that you're going through. I'm feeling lied to. Man, the injustice of this. And you begin to realize this is a very common human emotion. So you take the particulars of what you're feeling, and then you broaden them to see the universal truth that's present all in that situation. And what this does, and we can actually flip 2 slides here, what this does for us, it does 2 things. Let me show you why this is really, really important. It's important for speaking, but it's also important for living. Actually, let's go to the second one first. Oh, I forgot I had a... let's go a couple more here. 2 more, I believe. One more. When you do this, when you look at what you're experiencing, you look at the particular situation and you allow it to broaden to the universal, it shows your connectedness with others. I realize that, okay, I'm not the only one who's ever felt wronged. I'm not the only one who's ever been betrayed. This is something that has happened to every single person who has walked the earth. So when I bring up a story like this and I talk about being betrayed and being wronged, I start with the assumption that, well, everyone here in the room knows exactly what that feels like. Maybe not that particular situation, but you all have that universal experience of being wronged or being betrayed. And then the question becomes, well, how are you going to respond to such a situation? And when you realize that every single one of us, and for me, including the contractor, has been lied to and has been betrayed and wronged, it actually opens your heart up. And forgiveness is something that we've talked quite a lot about here at Awaken. And for me, the way in which I was able to move into forgiveness of the wrong that I felt that was done to me was to realize, well, this person is human, and this person has experienced this as well. And it gives you greater compassion for others. And it took this experience for me where I was just, I'm never going to forgive this guy. He stole our money. He keeps lying to me. I mean, my wife was so upset, like, he's ruining our family. Never got that bad, but, obviously, whenever in a situation like that, you really, extreme situations, and you're like, I'm never going to forgive that guy, the wrong that he did to me. But then you realize, well, he's been betrayed too. And my heart started to soften a bit. I began to have more compassion. And forgiveness was something that began slowly working in my heart. I'm going to let this go. I'm going to let this one go. And we can have a conversation. I can tell him how I feel, but I'm not going to harbor resentment in my heart. So whenever you take your particular situation, the things that you're feeling, and you broaden it, whenever you can get to the heart of, why do I feel this way? What am I feeling? You then begin to see that there's a universal truth that is contained right there in the story that you're experiencing. And then there's something else that happens. And we can actually, if we can go back a couple slides to the first thing. Whenever you're aware of what you're experiencing, of what something is, how it's acting on you, what it's teaching you, you then see how God is at work in your life. There's a quote that I love. It says, the universe is rigged for your growth. Sometimes I wish that wasn't true, because growth is really difficult. Growth makes us uncomfortable. The only reason that you grow is because there's something unfamiliar. We would never grow if we stay in the familiar, if we stay in the comfortable. We'd stay exactly where we are. And there's times in life where that's okay, that's necessary, because we've had a really difficult experience. We've had a season of growth, and so it's time just for comfort. But the truth is, you sit there long enough, eventually something is going to come your way, and it's going to force you to grow and to expand as a person. The universe is rigged for your growth. The reason why is, well, I think God made it this way because God desires for us to keep growing, to keep expanding. And so if you ever want to know, well, where is God at work in your life? Just ask, well, what's happening in my life? It's as simple as that. Being present to the moment, to what's happening, because that's where the Spirit is at work within you. And I know sometimes people ask, but wait a second, don't I need to pray to ask God, where are you at work? Sometimes I think that just convolutes it a little bit more. We're asking for an answer that we already have. God, where are you at work? And God's like, just look around. What's going on right now? What are you going through? That's an opportunity to grow. That's an invitation to be present to the wisdom that God is speaking right in the moment. There's a poem. It's by someone named Jim Palmer, and it's about the spiritual life. And he says, you don't need to find a spiritual path. I mean, doesn't that just bring anxiety up sometimes? I got to find my spiritual path. Sometimes I'll talk with people and they'll be like, I don't know where my spiritual path is. I don't know what to do. Then I love this. It just like calms all that anxiety. It's like a fresh breath. Just breathe out. You don't need a spiritual path. Your life is your spiritual path. Doesn't that just make things a whole lot easier? Less complicated? You don't need to find a spiritual path. You're already walking a spiritual path. Your very life is the spiritual path that you're looking for. The next moment is your teacher. Whatever arises next, make it your spiritual path. So what does the present moment require of you? Nothing? Awesome. Then nothing is your path. To notice something? All right, well then noticing is your path. Is it to act? Is there something that you feel compelled to do, to act on? Well then acting is your path. Is it to give love? Well then expressing love is your path. To create? Creating is your path. Is it to eat? Something as simple as eating? Yes. Then eating and being present to your food and grateful for the food that you are experiencing, well then that is your spiritual path. I mean, doesn't this make things a little bit easier for us? Where's God? Where's the spiritual? Is it to be aware of your true self? Well then awareness is your path. To shed tears, well then tears are the path. To be courageous, courage is your path. To notice a pattern of thought or behavior, then noticing is the path. To seek, well then seeking is your path. Or sometimes we need to let go of seeking. Sometimes our seeking is actually getting in the way. And so we need to let go of that seeking because that's our path. To be content, well then being content is your path. To be struck by beauty, then awe and wonder is your path. To be seized by bliss and ecstasy, well then bliss and ecstasy is your path. I love that. I love that. What's your spiritual path? Well, what's right in front of you? That's your spiritual path. And that's where God is at work. And if we're so consumed with getting to the next spot, or if we're so consumed with just regret or being way years, weeks in the past, and not for the reason of trying to learn from it, but just because we're continually bothered by it, we're going to miss out on what God is teaching us in the moment. So I want to end this series with, I think I have 3 or 4 questions for us. And these are questions for us to ask right now. We're all going through something in life. There's things that are in front of us, things that are inviting us to grow, to be present to. So a couple of questions. How is this experience, how is what you're going through currently, how is it acting on you? How is it making you feel? What are the emotions? I mentioned with that contract, there's anger, a feeling of being betrayed. So what are the emotions right now that are currently at the surface for you? What are you feeling? And then what is it teaching you? What are you learning in the moment? What have you found to be true? What have you discovered about yourself? What are you learning about yourself? And then what are you learning about others? What are you learning about the universal truths that are all around us? So that's basically how a small little toilet overflow became a 4-week sermon series on lessons from a toilet overflow. It all starts with being present. And I believe that you all have tremendous wisdom that's right there for the taking. Sometimes it just takes being silent, present, and doing a little digging. But I believe that God is right there offering wisdom for whatever it is that you're going through. Let me pray for us. I thank you, God, that you are a God who is always present. Thank you that your Spirit is always with us, inviting us to be present to the moment, to the beauty that's in front of us, God, to whatever it is that's right in front of us. And so I ask for all of us here this morning, God, that we would be people who would accept that invitation, as was offered to Moses, God, to be here, to be in this moment. Not to be 5 steps down the road or 5 steps in the past, but to be present to this moment and to what our current experiences are teaching us. So I pray that we would be people with the awareness to know exactly how an experience is acting on us. God, what it's doing to our interior life, how it's making us feel, what it's doing to our soul. And God, I pray that as we sit with those questions and as we reflect on what our experiences are teaching us, God, that we would discover the wisdom that you're offering us for this moment, the wisdom that will help us walk the path in front of us. So help us all to trust, God, that our life is the spiritual path that we need to be walking. God, may we not be seeking elsewhere, but may we be content to be in this moment and walking the path that is right in front of our feet. And so I pray, God, that you would bring whatever words or wisdom we need to hear right now. God, I pray that your Spirit would reveal that to each of us, and that we would be people who would grow, that we would be people who would continue deepening our relationship with you as we mine our lives for the wisdom that you're offering in this moment. So we ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.